everybody, welcome back to another lesson in my level 3 beginner piano course. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already done so, and if you like what you see, give this video a thumbs up. Also, I offer online piano lessons. If you're looking for one, there's going to be information below. So it's time to learn a very famous tune in this chapter about D major as well, and there was nothing else on my mind but the D major Musette from Bach's Anna Magdalena book. This one is such a famous piece, and I think everybody has to play it at one point or another, and you must have heard it before. It's really fun, and it's very good for orientation on the piano. It's very good for changing registers very quickly. It's very good for the key of D major and also for phrasing. Now, I want to be very clear about this, that all the slurs and all the dynamics are completely editorial, so I added them myself. The original manuscript didn't have any slurs and dynamics, so you are free to change it as you wish. I just added these to give you some guidance because this is one of the most popular way of playing it, but by no means at all the only way of playing it. The piece is quite long, as you could hear. I played the first line twice because it's repeated. Then we have another 3 lines, so a middle section in an A major dominant key, and that has to be repeated as well. And then it says D, C al fine, which is something new that we need to learn about today, and that means da capo al fine, which means repeat from the start until you get to the fine sign, or fine, but it's pronounced fine. So the fine is at the end of the second line. So we play the first 2 lines, we repeat them, then we play the second 3 lines, we repeat those 2, then we go back to the start and play the first 2 lines and then play those 2 again. So a lot of repetition. So once again, da capo al fine means go back to the start and finish at the fine sign. If you know nothing about the Anna Magdalena book, it's a collection of pieces, and for a long time people thought that most of the pieces were by Bach, but we now know from various sources that actually most of the pieces were not composed by Bach, but he merely collected them in this book. And we don't know for sure who composed this Musette in D, but since it's been part of this Anna Magdalena book, we kind of attribute it to Bach, but there's no evidence that he composed it. A standard rule of articulation in Baroque music is that the faster notes should usually be played legato, and the slower notes should be played detached or staccato, but more like detached. Now, obviously, this doesn't always apply. It really depends on the melody and the melodic ideas within the music. But in this piece, when you see the slur, try to play legato. When you see the 16th notes, try to play legato. And when you see the 8th notes, you can actually detach those, and it's going to give you a much more upbeat sound. So let's have a look at the first 2 lines. Obviously, we're in the key of D major, so every F and every C is going to be sharp, and the left hand is very simple. We are in 2/4, by the way, so 2 quarter note beats in every bar, and the left hand is going to start with this D octave. So that's middle C, D, and D. Now, the very important thing about this D octave, I've been teaching this piece to so many people, students with very small hands and students with bigger hands. If you have bigger hands, it's going to be much easier to learn it because you can keep your fingers above the notes when you move from one to the other. So it's much easier to kind of stay solidified in that position. But if you have smaller hands and you can't quite reach an octave, then it's going to be quite a long journey of memorization because your hand has to memorize where to land exactly. Obviously, it's easy when you're looking at your hand, but when you play the right hand and concentrate on the rhythm, you won't be able to look at your left hand. So your left hand, using muscle memory, has to remember where it has to go, the exact distance between the 2 Ds. So again, depending on the size of your hands, this might be a little bit harder. So starting on the D, 1 and 2 and 1 and 2, and jumping to the F sharp, 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. So we've got 16th notes there, semiquavers, 1 and, or 1 and, whatever way is easier for you to count. That should be legato, and then nicely detaching those notes. Then we jump back in bar 5 to the D, 2 and 1 and 2 and back to the F sharp, and it's almost exactly the same as the first line, but the F sharp is missing on the way down. And we have a fermata on this note, which means we need to hold it much longer. Now, the fermata doesn't need to be observed until you get to the very end of the piece. The right hand is going to start in this D major 5-finger position, middle C, and the rhythm is going to go like this. 1, teary, teary, 1, teary, teary, 1. So the 4 16th notes need to fit into one beat. 1, teary, teary, 1, teary, teary, and then jumping to the F sharp number 3, unison with the left hand, teary, ti, 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 ta, teary, teary, ta, teary, 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 ti, 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 ta. And that's the second line. Now, the biggest difficulty in this piece is the jump between the middle octaves and an octave higher. There's a big change in position, and we don't have time to move because the last note is a 16th note, so we need to be extremely quick. And many times what I hear is this. So we add a big gap between the second and the third bars because we have to change position from here to here. And in order to get rid of those gaps, which are not going to be productive at all, you have to play it really slowly until you can jump without stopping or hesitation, and then you can start incrementally increasing the speed. So and if you can do that, then you can start going faster. But if it doesn't work slowly and you have a gap, there's no way it's going to work fast. And even though you can play this really fast, if you need to stop before moving on to that F sharp, the whole piece is going to fall apart because the pulse is disrupted. Now, let's have a look at articulation again. So when we put it hands together, the left hand is counting for us, 1 and 2 and, but the left hand is detaching the notes and the right hand is legato. So, and many times what I see is the left hand becomes legato, if you can reach it, which really shouldn't be, or the right hand gets very detached. So make sure the right hand stays very nice and legato, connected with wrist circles, and the left hand is detaching. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1. And now we have unison, so both hands playing the same notes and the same rhythms but an octave apart. Then jumping back. And finishing on the D, so that's the end in D major. Now let's move on to the middle section where we move to the dominant A major. So let's start with the left hand. It's going to move from D to A. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. So the final two eighth notes or quavers are going to move to the E. So A and then E. And then the entire second line is just E's. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And the final line is going to be the hardest. So E, 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 D, number 3 on the C sharp, 2 on the D, 1 on the E, then A, D, C sharp, and finishing on the A. So counting 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. We've got 16th notes, semiquavers, eighth notes quavers, and quarter notes crotchets, so the pulse again has to be very secure. Right hand is going to start on the C sharp, and we have these shorter slurs, so 3 notes, drop, connect, bounce. Lift, lift, hold, lift, lift. And that's the first line. Again, all the slurs are my suggestions. You don't need to follow them. You can do it all detached. You can do it all legato. This is just a more stylistic way of playing it. So number 2 on the C sharp again. 1 and 2 and 5 on the A. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. Now 1 on the D and crossing over 3 on the C sharp and B, E. This one is again quite tricky because we have to do 1, 3 and then putting 3 next to the 1. So I see many issues in this bar. It needs to be practiced isolated. Then we go on to the second line. We have this beautiful theme here. So E is going to be slurs of 2 notes. E, D sharp, 1 on the E, D natural, C sharp, A, G sharp. And this repeats twice. So 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. And be careful with the tie, which is connecting the D from the first to the second bar. You need to hold that. And again, here we have a big jump, an octave jump, and the hand has to memorize that distance in order to be able to play it smoothly and flawlessly. And the final line, bar 17, starts number 4 on the E, and we've got 16th notes here. And here we move from white to black, so you need to make sure that the fingers accommodate and they come a little bit closer. Separating, 2 on the G sharp, 1 on the A, D, 1 crossing over D. So quite a lot of jumping in this last line, that's why I said it's quite difficult. Now let's add the hands together, so lots of phrasing. I'm going to do the slurs. 1 and 2 and here was my change to the E. Now carrying on loud. And that's the end. So here again, really important to hold that tie. 1 and 2 and 1 and. And in the final line, we've got those jumpy bits, which needs to be practiced a lot. So jumping around. Now, dynamics-wise, here we start P. And then when we get to the second line, loud. And when you repeat the same idea again, you go quiet. And then back to loud. Again, this is suggestions, so if you find something that works better for you, by all means you can go and change it. But add some dynamics to make it more interesting, because the piano is capable of dynamics and you should use that ability. When you got to the end, you have to jump back to the start and repeat it again and finally finish on the D. So with the repeats, it's actually quite a long piece. It's one of my favorites and I hope you'll enjoy it as much as I do. Please be careful with the evenness of the speed. Practice very slowly to make sure there are no gaps and hesitations anywhere. And if you can do that slowly, only then start going faster. It's very tempting with this piece to go fast because the notes are fairly easy, but the faster you go at the start, the longer or bigger the gaps are going to be between these critical sections.